into another Mercy Health matchup as we preview games in the Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown. I'm Richard Skinner. He's Tony Pike. It's brought to you by Mercy Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Meyer. And our first game we're looking at is Moeller taking on Elder at the Pit on Friday night. This is a Moeller team, Tony, that's really struggling. Gave up 41 points and almost 500 yards rushing to LaSalle. How do they keep this potent Elder offense in check?
Well, you have to possess the ball, and for Moeller, that's been the problem all year. You've got to find a way to get yourself into second, third, and manageables, and by doing so, you can extend drives and start working that clock. It's a way they try to go about the St. X game. They built a 24-12 lead, but that game, the X tempo just kind of wore them out in the second half. So for something like this to stay in the game, you need something like you saw in the X game, a special teams touchdown, force some turnovers, and possess the ball, because when Elder has the ball offensively, we've seen this year they can score in bunches.
Let's look at this Elder football team defensively. There have been teams that have been able to score on them, and we saw them give up 54 points in a game that they won. They went through a stretch. I think they gave up 128 points in a three-game stretch and actually went 2-1 in that stretch, gave up 42 in their lone loss to Indy Cathedral. We saw Moeller last week a little bit do some things offensively. They didn't get a lot rolling, but they got enough to get 20 points up on the board against a really good LaSalle defense. Is that Elder defense at least something that maybe Moeller can punch a hole in or two?
Yeah, 20 points against that LaSalle defense, as you mentioned, is really good. The Elder defense has been a question all year, and it's going to remain a question because they've had to resort to outscoring teams for most of this year. You could probably do that against Moeller, but there's definitely things to exploit. Elder, historically, they have an undersized defense, and guys just get in there and play hard. They play a lot of man-to-man. So for Moeller, if you can take your shots and connect on a couple of those down the field, you can put yourselves in an opportunity to score some points.
All right, again, that's Moeller and Elder. It's this Friday night at the Pit. It's part of our Mercy Health matchup, and it's part of the Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown. For more information on all the Crosstown Showdown games, go to xtownshowdown.com, and you can find it on Twitter at xtownshowdown as well. Coming up next, it's the Mercy Health Huddle, your source for your student-athlete.
Hi again, everybody. We're here today with Dr. Matt Brism from Mercy Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. And today, Doc, we're going to talk about football and shoulder injuries. Unfortunately, they kind of go together. And first off, the shoulder is a very complex joint. Maybe explain the anatomy of the shoulder.
Well, you're exactly right. The shoulder is incredibly complex. There's an excess of 15 different muscles that insert on the shoulder blade itself. There's 5 different joints or spaces around the shoulder. Up front, we have the sternoclavicular joint where the collarbone meets the chest. We have the acromioclavicular joint where the collarbone meets the bony roof of the shoulder. We have the main ball and socket joint or glenohumeral joint of the shoulder. In the back, we have where the scapula or shoulder blade meets the chest wall called the scapulothoracic joint. And then we have the subacromial space. And that's not even including all the rotator cuff muscles, the labrum, and the other ligaments that are around there. So when someone comes to me and says, I have a shoulder injury, I say that's akin to coming to your mechanic and saying, something's wrong with my car. There are a lot of different things that can be going on in that shoulder.
A couple of the injuries that we hear mostly with the shoulder separation, shoulder dislocation. What's the difference between those two?
Well, you're exactly right. There's a difference. Because those words seem similar, separation and dislocation, people sometimes think they're interchangeable, but in fact they're completely different injuries. A dislocation happens when the ball comes out of the socket. That's a shoulder dislocation. Oftentimes we have an injury to the bone, we have an injury to the cartilage rim around the bone called the labrum. Sometimes the ligaments are stretched, and there are times when that's going to require an operation. An AC separation or a shoulder separation is different. The collarbone meets the bony roof of the shoulder at a joint called the acromioclavicular joint. So an AC separation is when that joint gets injured, either with a sprain or a full-on separation of the bones from each other.
When do we want to get a diagnosis for it? Is an x-ray better or maybe a formal evaluation?
Well, starting off with a formal evaluation with your athletic trainer on the field is really important, and your team physician should be readily available as well. An x-ray is oftentimes very important in shoulder injuries, especially in high school athletes, because of what we call developmental anatomy. The athlete's growth areas oftentimes are still open, especially at the end of the collarbone, well until they're 18 or 19 years old. So an injury that we may think is a straightforward separation in a 25 or 30-year-old athlete, in truth, in a high school athlete, may be a growth plate fracture, and we have to treat those things differently.
With a shoulder separation, can you expect surgery with that then too?
Well, the good news is most shoulder separations will not require surgery. We classify them as one of 5 different injuries, and on the lower end of the spectrum we have types 1, 2, and 3. Those rarely require injuries. Types 4 and 5 are more X Games or car wreck type trauma. When you have a complete dislocation of the bones from each other, those can occasionally require surgery. And the good news is that we see dozens of athletes with relatively significant injuries, type 3 injuries, that have gone on to be incredibly successful, including Heisman Trophy winners who've won national championships and who've played in the Super Bowl, and they never required an operation.
How about the age then? I'm going to guess a shoulder injury to a younger person might not be as severe as somebody older?
Well, there's a lot of variables there. Our goal ultimately is to make sure that the injury that you suffer, if you suffer one when you're 15 or 16 years old, doesn't become a problem when you're 35 or 40 years old. We need to find a good diagnosis, develop a rehabilitation plan, and keep you safe, get you back on the field doing what you want to do, but make sure we're not compromising your long-term health.
Oh, that's great. How about long-term then, expectations from somebody injures it young? What can they expect down the road?
The truth is, this joint up on top, the acromioclavicular joint, develops arthritis in lots and lots of people, whether you had an injury or not. The good news is, most of that arthritis is not symptomatic. So again, when we have an injury in a young person, we want to make sure we have the correct diagnosis, develop a comprehensive rehabilitation program, keep you safe, get you back to doing what you want to do, what you've trained to do, and make sure that doesn't turn into a problem in your adulthood.
Doc, great information about the shoulder today. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
When it hurts to move, what often hurts most is the fact that you can't. Because every rebound is calling your name, and every dance should be danced. It's in moments like these that we step in to help you step back off the sidelines. Because it takes two to tango in this life, and you are meant to be the one. Mercy Health, healthcare for the universe of you. Find an orthopedic doctor at mercy.com/ortho.